Born on August 16th, 1815, Giovanni Melchior Bosco, also known as Saint John Bosco or Don Bosco, is one of the most loved saints in the Catholic Church. He was born to Francis and Margaret Bosco, and he has two older brothers. He lost his father when he was 2 years old, so life was tough. Plus his mom had to raise all three sons by herself. But regardless, St. John Bosco embraced this work from his heart. When John was 9 years old, he had a dream that would go on to influence him for the rest of his life. He dreamed that he was in a large playground filled with a vast amount of boys, but many of the boys were using foul language and fighting amongst each other. John was so offended by what he heard that he went up to the boys and started throwing punches. After being struck, the boys got even more angrier, and soon everybody was throwing punches. But just then, a noble-looking man, dressed in a long white robe, showed up in the midst of them, and all the boys stopped and stared at him. He called John over and introduced himself as the son of the lady. He then asked John to show the other boys that sin is evil and that purity is a precious gift. He asked John to follow the lady, and she will help all these things become easier for him. Then the man left, and John was very confused. All of a sudden, he looks at the boys and they all turn into dogs and wolves and other wild animals. Then he turns around and the lady appears to him, and she says, "Don't worry." And she tells John to do unto those boys like she does for all her sons. All of a sudden, the boys turned into lambs and they started coming closer to the lady and her son. John was very confused at this. But he woke up the next morning and he shared his dream with his grandmother, with his brothers, and with his mother. And they all gave him various opinions as to what it could mean. But it was his mother who suggested that maybe he's called to be a priest. And at that suggestion, John looked up and smiled at her. The seed for priesthood was planted in John's heart at a very early age, and he responded with childlike obedience. John also had a thrill of entertaining people, and so he trained himself in juggling, walking the tightrope, and various other tricks that he would use to entertain his friends and anybody who wanted to watch, under one condition, that every show would start and end with a prayer. The entertainment was absolutely free and open to anyone who wanted to watch, and sometimes it even included the recitation of the homily from that day's Mass. John's desire to share God's work is what led him to the seminary. John's poor family status and lack of literacy was an obstacle to him becoming a priest. But by God's grace, he learned how to read, became an avid reader, and worked his way through so he could get in. He still had this unquenchable desire to help the youth, and he would spend his free time teaching them catechism and supervising their sports and performing the tricks that he had performed before for them. And they would love his presence and they would gather, so much so that spending time with him on Sunday was like routine for them. When he was ordained a priest, he was also appointed chaplain, but he resigned when his boys were not granted permission to play sports on the property. John noticed that a lot of boys were roaming around Torino, boys of the slums that had nobody else to take care of them, but he felt it in his heart to look after these boys, and he wanted a place to provide for them. Nobody else in town or in any neighborhood wanted to have such a rowdy crowd, so John had to go to a really rundown place of the city where he started an oratory for the boys. At first, boys started enrolling in few numbers, but once word spread and interest was developing, hundreds of boys started enrolling. And this started John's mission to cater to the youth of Torino. John's work with the young men was tremendously successful. He took them in, taught them trades, and even enlisted the help of his mother, Mama Margaret, to help them because he felt the boys needed the love of a mother. He named his order the Salesians, or the Society of St. Francis de Sales, after his favorite saint. 4 years later, he founded Daughters of the Mary Help of Christians to do for the young girls what the Salesians did for the young guys. And he also founded a lay institute to take care of both the young girls and the young guys. Many mobsters had it out for John Bosco because he was taking their future thieves off the street and teaching them things, and that was putting them out of business. But John persevered with great trust in the Lord. John Bosco had an intense devotion to the Blessed Sacrament and to Mary Help of Christians, and God blessed him with an innumerable amount of graces. He even had a dog that would follow him around on his night missions and protect him from those who wished to harm him. But most importantly, he had the ability to have prophetic dreams, in which he would see the moral condition of his boys, and he would use those dreams to prepare them for when they were going to meet the Lord. Oftentimes, he would dream about boys who would be passing away soon or who wouldn't be in a morally pure state, and he would use the sacrament of reconciliation to bring them closer to the Lord. John was also known for being a phenomenal teacher and has produced a pedagogy system that involves mentoring students with love and with care and for being them for him. And this pedagogy is in circulation even till today. The Salesians continue to lead youth to Christ in thousands of oratories and colleges around the world. It all started because of the childlike obedience of a 9-year-old boy in northern Italy. Because of his devotion to Jesus and Mary, his love and gentleness, St. John Bosco was able to capture the heart of millions. And that's why he's my favorite saint. I now have a first-class relic, a bone fragment of St. John Bosco. St. John Bosco, pray for us.